Hello and welcome back to Something Z, and welcome to If Naruto at the Four Tails Part 4. Last time on the What If, Team 7 took part in the second part of the chunin exams, and during the Forest of Death, Team 7 fought Orochimaru, disguised as Shuar. And as a result of the fight, Naruto got an extra seal placed on him, and Sasuke got the curse mark. And with that, Naruto can't use the Four Tails' chakra, and Sasuke can't use chakra without feeling intense pain throughout his entire body. But even with that, Team 7 was able to pass and make it to the Rendezvous Tower. And now that that's out of the way, let's jump into the video in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we begin this what if the morning after the last part ended, and when it was early in the morning, the Genin were told to wake up, and once they were told, they were given 15 minutes to get ready before the third Hokage walked into the room, and when Lord Third entered the room, he congratulated them all for making it so far. Then he told them to follow him into the next room, and when they did, they found themselves in a large arena. Then they were told to line up by their teams, and when they were lined up, the Genin were told that because too many examinees passed the last part of the exams, they will be doing 1v1s to have the number of Genin. But right after the examiners explained the concept of the 1v1s, Kabuto raised his hand and he said that he quits, and the reason for him quitting is because he got too injured during the Forest of Death, and he said that there would be no point in him participating in the exams if he's just gonna fail. Then once Kabuto quit, he was let out of the giant stadium, and once Kabuto left the room, the main examiner continued on with the next phase. So he showed the names of the first matchup. Then once the names were revealed, the first match began, which was Sasuke against a shinobi by the name of Yorui. And with the match beginning, everyone else began to walk away and go to a flight of stairs, which led them to a second floor where non-fighters can watch. But while most of the people were already at the flight of stairs, Kakashi appeared behind Sasuke, and he told him that he knew what had happened to him, and what he was hiding. So he told him that if it went off at all, then he would force him to quit the exams. And when he was done, he asked Sasuke if he understood, and in response, Sasuke nodded. And when Kakashi saw this, he walked away to the stands. And when everyone left and when the two were ready, the match began. And when the match began, Sasuke ran at Yorui and the two began to fight by doing hand-to-hand combat. And the reason he did this was because he knew he couldn't use ninjutsu and chakra, or he would feel an intense pain. And he didn't want to risk letting the curse mark take control. And after multiple hits from Yorui, Sasuke noticed that with every hit, he would feel heavier and more tired. And after around 5 hits, Sasuke was able to figure out what was going on. And what was happening was that Yorui has a special ability to drain chakra, but only through physical contact. And realizing this, Sasuke jumped back a couple feet. Then when he was a couple feet away, Sasuke began to think about what he should do, because he knows that if things go the way they are now, he will lose. Then after some thinking for around 30 seconds, he remembered what Lee did to him before the exams even started. So Sasuke ran at Yorui and he kicked him into the air, and he began to do a barrage of attacks, with the last one being a kick to the back, which flung Yorui back to the ground. And when he hit the ground, Yorui was too injured to continue fighting, making Sasuke the winner of the first match. Then right after Sasuke won his match, Kakashi took him, and he led him to a remote location to take care of the curse mark. And while this was going on, the rest of the matches that were during that time took place, with the results being the same for every match. So now we jump to the match between Kiba and Naruto, and when the fight was about to begin, Kiba and Akamaru were on one side while Naruto was on the other. And right after the match began, Kiba took out 2 pills, and both he and Akamaru had one. And when the pills were consumed, the two got powered up, with both their physical strength and their chakra increasing. Then Akamaru turned into Kiba, and after they got ready, they ran Naruto on all fours. And seeing this, Naruto tried his best to heat himself up by trying to tap into the Four Tails' chakra, but after a couple seconds, nothing happened. And because he was focused on this, he was wide open to an attack. So Kiba and Akamaru were able to get to him first, and they kicked Naruto in the gut twice, launching Naruto a couple feet away. Then once Naruto landed, Kiba and Akamaru used fang over fang and they sped towards Naruto. And seeing this, Naruto put his hands to the ground and made 2 earth walls, with them being behind and in front of each other. But because the two were able to see it in time, Kiba and Akamaru jumped away from each other, and they both jumped to different sides of the wall. Then they jumped back together once they got to the other side of the earth walls, and they were able to get to Naruto before Naruto was able to react, making Naruto get hit again, launching him many feet away. Then seeing this, Naruto knew that he needed to think of something, because he knew his physical strength has been weakened, and he knows that Kiba and Akamaru was able to overpower him easily because of this. Then after a couple seconds, Naruto was able to come up with an idea. So Naruto then put his fingers together, and he used the Shadow Clone Jutsu. So he made a giant poof of smoke, and when the smoke was gone, there was 40 Narutos. And once the Narutos were fully formed, they all began to run at the two. And while they were running, they were all shooting out flaming boulders. But because the Kibas were powered up, they were able to easily outspeed the flaming boulders, making the boulders fall to the ground behind them, making craters, with them making smelly dark smoke around the area they landed in. Then after around 3 minutes, the Kibas were able to wipe out most of the Naruto clones, with there only being around 5 left. And all around the arena, there were flaming boulders, which were filling the arena with a scent of smoke. And it's making it somewhat hard to see because the arena is in a closed room. Then once the Kibas were closing in on the Narutos, Naruto undid the Shadow Clone Jutsu, making the Kibas and the remaining Naruto get clouded in smoke. Then once the smoke was gone, there was 3 Kibas, because in the smoke, Naruto used the transformation jutsu, turning him into Kiba. Then seeing the new Kiba, Kiba tried his best to smell which was the real Naruto. But because of the smoke, Kiba had a decently hard time actually smelling. But after a couple seconds, Kiba punched one of the Kibas, making the Kiba fall to the ground. Then once the Kiba hit the ground, he got covered with smoke. Then when the smoke was gone, it was revealed to be Akamaru. And seeing this, Kiba was stunned. Then before he was able to react, Naruto was able to punch Kiba in the face. Then before Kiba was able to recover from the punch, Naruto made multiple shadow clones. And when the group of Narutos got to the Kiba, they began to combo attack him, using almost the same techniques that Sasuke did, with the final attack being a kick to the back, launching Kiba back to the ground. And when Kiba hit the ground, he was too injured to continue, so Naruto was labeled the winner of the match. So now we skip past the rest of the matches, and everything we just skipped will happen the same as in the canon. So Hinata gets defeated, Lee's body gets destroyed, and Kakashi had to deal with Orochimaru. Okay, so now we skip to when the final match concluded, and when it was all over, the Getting That Pass were shown what their matchups were for the final phase, with Nechi against Naruto. Then they were told that they will have a month to train before the next phase. Then right after that, they were told to leave. And when they left, Naruto ran over to Kakashi and he asked him if he could train him. But hearing this, Kakashi told Naruto no, because since he told him he was too busy. But then he told him that he can find someone else to train him instead. Then once he said that, Kakashi then continued to walk away. And while he was walking, he told Naruto to meet him the next morning on the Hokage heads. So now we skip to the next day, and after an hour of Naruto waiting on the Hokage heads, Kakashi appeared, with there being someone walking beside him. And when they were a couple feet away, Naruto was able to realize that the person standing right next to him was Ibisu. And when the two got close enough to talk, Naruto asked Kakashi why did he bring Ibisu, and he told him that he was stronger than him. And he was about to tell him about that time he beat Ibisu using only one attack. But before he could explain what happened, Ibisu quickly ran over to Naruto and he covered his mouth. And after struggling for a bit, Ibisu whispered in Naruto's ear that if he didn't say anything, he would treat Naruto to ramen. And hearing this, Naruto quieted down. And after a bit of talking, Kakashi walked away. And when Kakashi was gone, Ibisu told Naruto that he knew he didn't want to be trained by him. And he told him he didn't want to do this either. So he makes a deal with him, which was if he could escape him, then he would resign from being his instructor, and he would make sure Kakashi would have enough time to train him. And hearing this, Naruto immediately jumped down from the Hokage head and he began to try to hide. But after an hour of hiding, Naruto got found again and again and again, with Ibisu finding him every couple minutes. But eventually, Naruto decided to finally give up, and afterward they ate ramen. And when they were done with that, they went to the Leaf's hot springs, and there Naruto trained how to walk on water. But after half an hour of training, Ibisu noticed an old man with white hair peeping into the girls' changing rooms, so he went to stop him. But when he confronted the man summoned a toad, which hit Ibisu in the gut with his tongue. And with that one attack, Ibisu fell to the ground. And the second he hit the ground, he was knocked out. And seeing this, Naruto ran to Ibisu and he tried to wake him up. But after multiple attempts, it was obvious that it was useless. And seeing this, Naruto shouted at the old man for his name, which he found out was Jiraiya. And once he got that, he told him that he will have to supervise his training since he knocked out his last trainer, which at first he opposed to, but after some convincing, he decided to supervise Naruto's training. So the two then walked to a river that was outside the Leaf, and when the two got to the river, Naruto did the same training he did at the hot springs with the same results, with him at most being able to take one step on the water, but then falling into the river the next. And after a couple attempts, he took off his jacket and shirt because they were both completely soaked. Then once they were off, he tried again. And while they were off and while he was focusing, Jiraiya noticed that something was on Naruto's stomach. And when he looked closely, he realized that it was a seal that was made from the fourth Hokage. But then he realized that there seems to be an extra seal on him. So once Naruto failed that attempt, Jiraiya told him to come to him. And reluctantly, Naruto walked over to him. And when Naruto got to him, Jiraiya seemed to have punched him in the gut. But in reality, he undid the extra seal that was placed on him by Orochimaru. Then once Naruto recovered from the hit, Naruto walked back to the river and he tried to walk on the water again. And when he tried this time, he was able to effortlessly walk on the water. Then Naruto realized he felt a lot better than he had for the past couple days, ever since the Forest of Death. And he and the Four Tails was able to sense that their connection has been reformed. So Naruto then began to focus, channeling the Four Tails' chakra. And after a couple seconds, Naruto began to heat up, making him look like a melting piece of metal. Then once Naruto was at hot temperature, Naruto began to jump from tree to tree at high speeds, testing if his strength was back, which it was. Then after a couple trees, Naruto calmed down, so he reverted back to normal. And when Jiraiya saw all of this, he was able to prove that his assumption was correct, which was that Naruto was the Leaf's Jinchuriki. Then once Naruto was back to normal, he walked over to Jiraiya. And once he was at Jiraiya, Jiraiya asked him how much could he control the Four Tails. And after hearing this, Naruto began to explain his relationship with the Four Tails, and the initial form plus the time limit. Then once he was done, Jiraiya told Naruto that they were done for the day, and that they will continue the next day for some more training. Okay, so now we skip to the next day, when Naruto was able to get Jiraiya undistracted. Jiraiya summons a giant toad with a scroll in his mouth. Then he explains that the technique he will teach Naruto is the summoning jutsu. And after he was done explaining the premise, Naruto signs the scroll by binding onto his thumb, then when signing it with his own blood. Then Naruto began to practice using the summoning jutsu, and the results will be the exact same as in the canon, with Naruto only being able to summon tadpoles for the first couple days. And after around 4 days, Naruto still hasn't made that much progress since the beginning. And seeing this, Jiraiya decided that he needed to take a different approach to Naruto learning the summoning jutsu. So on that day when Jiraiya met up with Naruto, he was weirdly happy, and he did things he wouldn't normally do, such as buy Naruto ramen, and telling him to live today as if it was his last. And after a couple hours, Jiraiya takes Naruto to a different training area. And before Naruto was able to react, Jiraiya was able to push Naruto through a bush. And when Naruto was able to open his eyes again, he found himself starting to fall into a ravine. And seeing that the ground was coming closer to him, Naruto began to think about what he should do next. Because no matter how much he began to think, he couldn't think of anything that wouldn't kill him or injure him permanently. And because he was in the middle of the ravine, even if he heats himself up, he can't touch anything to bounce off of. And after around 30 seconds, the Four Tails gave Naruto a suggestion, which was to use his power to boost his summoning jutsu. So Naruto began to do the hand signs, and right before he hit the bottom, he was able to use his summoning jutsu. And unlike his other attempts, he was actually able to summon a toad, which cushioned his fall. And when Naruto landed, he heard something begin to shout. And when Naruto was able to tell that it was the toad that he just summoned talking, he was able to tell what it was saying. And it was asking where was Jiraiya. And in response, Naruto shouts that he is outside the ravine. But right after Naruto told the toad this, he got too full of himself. So Naruto then said that because he was the one that summoned the toad must do whatever he says, which made the toad mad and upset. So the toad then makes a deal with Naruto, which was if he could stay on his back for the rest of the day, he will consider making him his underling. And seeing that he needs the toad's help to get out of the ravine, and because he wants the toad's strength, Naruto decided to take up the toad with the offer. And when the toad hears this, he jumps high into the air, to the point where they're miles over the ravine. And when the challenge began, the toad just shook himself in order to try to fling Naruto off. But when that didn't seem to work, it began to jump around and shake. And the way Naruto stayed on was either using his clones to help him hold on, or if he was really desperate, Naruto used the Four Tails' chakra to increase his strength, allowing him to hold on. So now I skip to the end of the day, and Naruto was able to stay on the toad's back the whole time. And when the toad declared that the challenge ended, Naruto passed out, because he overexerted himself. And when the toad noticed that Naruto passed out, he took him to the Leaf's hospital, and he left him at the front entrance. And when the toad landed, he created a giant thud. And because of that noise, the doctors inside were able to hear it. And because of this, the doctors all ran to the entrance to see what it was. And when they looked at the front doors, they saw an unconscious Naruto, with a giant footprint right next to him. And seeing as he was low on energy, the doctors took him in for the night, so he could be treated. And that's what I'm going to do with What If. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next time on Something Z.